I will eat your ass.
In the nation, Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. We're here. So those of you tuning into the live stream, I'm a couple minutes late. Okay, I already let everybody know about that. I actually had a printer problem, which involved me having to run out and grab a new printer, and then set it all up like an hour before the show. Yikes. And then, of course, I had other stuff to take care of, too, before I get to the show. So it's one of those days. But all right. So there's that. Let's move on. We got a lot of stuff to cover and not a lot of time. I'm already going to go over as it is. So let's just kind of dive right into this. All right. Please like and share the stream, by the way. All right. With some people starting to already see the impacts of the American Rescue Act in the form of $1,400 hitting their bank accounts over the weekend. That's, of course, unless you have some debts and your debt collectors have jumped on it already. That's a separate story. But nonetheless, if you have received your $1,400, great. Just know that Republicans are rushing to take credit for a bill they had absolutely nothing to do with. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, let me give some examples here. So this actually happened. This is a part of the story is actually last week. OK, so last week, Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi's Republican tweeted that independent restaurant operators were going to get billions of dollars in rescue funds from this stimulus proposal. OK. So now here's what he tweeted. Independent restaurant operators have won $28.6 billion worth of targeted relief. Good. This funding will ensure small businesses can survive the pandemic by helping to adapt their operations and keep their employees in the payroll. So that's good. Hey, money for small business. I'm not going to argue with that. I am a small business. And so I get it. Money for small business, good. Money for people, good. Why would you be against this? Well, the Republicans, they're against all things that are actually good and for things that are actually bad. And so now the House passed that relief legislation on Wednesday. This is the time of the tweet. This was a 220 to 211 vote. One Democrat, Maine's Representative Jared Golden, voted with the Republicans, every single Republican voting no. In the Senate, as you recall, that all Republicans also voted no. And this was not only on Wednesday, but also when the final vote came up. And so, all right. Hey, very interesting, right? So all the Republicans not in favor of this. All right. Interesting. Now, when reporters on the Hill asked Wicker about his tweet and the fact that he also voted against the bill on Wednesday, he said, that is a, quote, stupid question. No, it's not. You voted against a bill that you just touted. Why is that a stupid question? Why is that a stupid question? But here's what he said. One good provision in a $1.9 trillion bill doesn't mean I have to vote for the whole thing. Oh, okay. Well, sure. I get that. Okay. All right. Fair enough. But actually, in reality, there's a lot of good provisions to this proposal. But apparently he only found the one good. So understand that Roger Wicker is saying that the $1,400 checks that are going out to you and your family sometime later this week or have even hit your accounts already, that's not a good thing to Roger Wicker. That's not a good thing to Republicans. They see that as bad. Like, poor people getting money. Oh, hate it. Oh, no, not interested at all. Get it away from me. Get it away from me. The only thing that I like is small business relief. Now, look, as I mentioned before, I like it when small businesses get some assistance, right? We're not in favor, or we're not against that. We're in favor of that, right? Now, what we're not in favor of is big corporations coming in and using tricky whatever subsidiary bullshit to go and actually get small business loans. And we also don't like it when people will come in, who railed against this legislation, against the bill, against the Democrats, and then will come in and take small business loans, as some on the right wing have done. Some independent YouTubers. I think even Tim Pool is one of those people. And so, those people will come in and be like, oh my God, everything the Democrats do is terrible. This bill is awful. By the way, let me get some of that small business relief, these paycheck protection loans. Yeah. Let's get that. Oh yeah, loving it. Let me get that money. It's free money from the government. I'm gonna take it. But anyway, back to Wicker here. He says, I was for that bill. Introduced that bill long before this legislation. So he pushed another thing that was so-called small business relief. An aide to Wicker also added this, quote, he was not able to support $2 trillion in poorly targeted spending. As was proposed by congressional Democrats, we will continue working to advance targeted relief for restaurants and other groups that have been hit hard by the pandemic. Understand that this coronavirus stimulus bill it's actually more targeted than any of the other COVID relief bills. It actually got up to less people, which I don't know how the Democrats thought that was a good idea. Because even doing that, you still have Republicans that are like, not targeted enough. Needs more targeting. All right. So now here's the thing. Roger Wicker voted against the relief at all. So if it were up to Roger Wicker, these companies, these small businesses, wouldn't have gotten anything. So that's the alternative right there. Because Republicans, again, voted en masse against everything, the entire proposal. What kind of tricky crap is this? But you know what? There's more. At least 4 different Republican congresspeople actually tried to convince their constituents that they played a role in the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. And for example, on Friday, Representative Maria Elvira Salazar took to Twitter and said this, so proud to announce the Biden administration has just implemented my bipartisan COVID relief bill as part of SBA Gov policy. So again, she voted against it, but since they took a provision that she was in favor of for small business administration loans, she's like, so glad. I'm so glad that Joe Biden and the Democrats included this provision into a bill that I ultimately shot down. And then, of course, you had Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert. Oh, yes. Here's what she said. So she took a little bit of a different tack, especially when it came to the stimulus checks, because, look, the stimulus checks are incredibly popular. That's not only just among Democrats, but Republicans. Turns out Republicans also like getting free money. Who would have known? And this, of course, money is absolutely necessary for people to be able to survive, pay rent, food, etc. Right? But here's Lauren Boebert trying to put a nice conservative spin on this, right? So she says, this is not $1,400 given to you by your generous government, of which, of course, she is a part of. Just saying. This is money that you and your fellow countrymen already paid into the system. All right. Actually, no. Look, what she's expressing is what a lot of people think that they understand about the economy, what they understand about federal spending, right? A lot of what we've learned when it comes to federal spending is actually wrong. And so let me give you some examples, right? So what this is in the coronavirus stimulus is basically just money that the government, told the Federal Reserve to print up out of thin air and then decided to send a portion of it to the American people. And that's it. Again, I know a lot of people don't realize this and also don't realize that money is technically not real. It is a medium of exchange. That's really all it is. It basically is a stand-in and a replacement for the barter system. And what money does is that it actually represents real resources, but it is a universal medium of exchange. Okay. And so let me give you an example here. Okay. So now think of it this way. So back in the olden days, this is kind of how the barter system worked. You had 2 goats, right? Or I'm sorry, you didn't have 2 goats. You really wished that you had some goats, right? Maybe you want to make goat cheese. I don't know. Okay. Maybe you want to make goat cheese, but all you have is chickens. You can't make goat cheese from chickens, can you? So no, in a barter system, you would have to find someone who has 2 goats that they want to trade. So, but all you got's the chickens. So you need to find somebody who has the goats that he's willing to sell in exchange for 5 chickens or however many chickens. All right. Now, but what if he wants cows in exchange? Well, you're screwed because you don't have cows. So in that system, you'd have to go and find somebody with cows that will take chickens as payment or something else, assuming that you can find something else you want to trade. Say you get the cows and then you're finally able to trade them and you get the goats and you can make your goat cheese. Okay. You know what that sounds like? A pain in the dick. And that's it. So some people thought, hey, you know what? That system sucks. What we're going to do is we're going to invent money, a medium of exchange that is universally accepted. And we're going to get everybody to use this to make commerce simple. That's it. And in order to, of course, ensure that everybody accepts this medium of exchange, we are going to make it backed by the government. So now the government is saying, no, you will accept this currency that we have created. And that's it. Like, you're going to use it because we have adopted it. And that's it. All right. So that is why, again, we have this universal currency where now instead of, having to do all that trading, you can buy the goats for cash. Maybe you got to sell the chickens for cash first. Somebody will buy it, whatever, right? You got to have, still got to have somebody who wants it or go to a market stall or whatever. But, it's a lot easier than what it is before. All right. And so you have this currency that's backed by the government in order to make it universally accepted. And again, it makes commerce so much easier. And so, all right. Now, the point is, Lauren Boebert and a lot of conservatives and just generally a lot of people don't quite understand how it works. All right. Now, the government did technically kind of create the money. Right. I mean, yes, they called up the Federal Reserve and literally had the Federal Reserve say or print up this money or add it to their credit accounts or whatever. Right. Point is, the government said we need $1.9 trillion. They said, OK, we're going to give you that. And then they dispersed it to the people. OK, and it's still a simplistic explanation of kind of how things work. It is, again, complicated. You have a lot of, different factors. You have inflation, you have interest rates, exchange of international currency, money by fiat. Turns out the economics is not very simple. OK, but nonetheless, there is a reason conservatives lie about how it works. For one, it does take a lot of explanation. But secondly, there's a political factor to it, and that political factor is they don't want money to go to you. They don't want resources to go to you. And that's essentially it. Since money is a stand-in for those resources, they don't want national shared resources going to the American people. Instead, they want the resources to go to the rich who already have all the resources. They don't need them. And again, these dollars equal food, medicine, shelter, water, transportation, things that people need to live and not just live, but to thrive as well. And the Republican Party understand that they like to deny you these things because they believe you to be undeserving of it unless you're willing to, of course, sell your body in the form of labor for someone else to profit from. And that's, of course, essentially what capitalism is. All right. And again, that's how it works. Now, Boebert says, no, that's not government money. It's your money. Well, again, yes, and no. OK, so now the reason that there is taxation to begin with is that, again, the you got to take the money out of circulation so that money is scarce in a system like this. All right. And when money is more scarce, just like resources, it increases in value. The more money there is, and we've seen this with countries with hyperinflation where there's so much money, there's too much currency and it's not worth anything because there's so much. Well, then you have, again, a situation where you have no buying power, even with lots and lots and lots of money. And so that's a problem. That's what you can avoid. And here's the thing. Here's the reason why, is that even though money itself is infinite, it's created out of thin air, the resources that it represents are not. They are not infinite. And so, for example, there's only so much gold. There's almost so much silver, capital, labor, land, food, whatever. You kind of get the grift, or the drift, I should say. Super simplistic, right? But basically, Lauren Boebert and the rest of the Republican Party don't think that you're deserving of these resources. They just don't. And they also don't want you to think that government can work. Now, the stimulus is an example of the government actually doing something positive for the American people. And there are a lot of problems with the stimulus bill, obviously, and there's been a lot of problems with a lot of the stimulus bills. Still, it's better because it actually does show that government can be somewhat effective, even when, basically one of the chambers of government doesn't really want to do anything. All right. So, again, super simplistic. Now, the Republicans also, as I mentioned before, want to hoard resources to their rich friends. Turns out that's not a popular position. And so, as a result, they lie, they gaslight, they do all this stuff to sabotage government programs to make sure government doesn't actually work. They divide the populace among racial, ethnic, and economic lines and get them to fight so that we don't have a more fair and equitable distribution of those resources. And that's what the stimulus is. It is a redistribution of certain resources. And again, Republicans are not in favor of doing that. And it is sort of ironic that these same Republicans who say they're against redistribution are in favor of redistribution. They love redistribution, generally if it goes to the rich, but also if this redistribution happens to be popular among their own base, they're going to try to claim credit for it, even when they didn't actually do anything about it. So, again, polls found that a majority of the public, both Republicans and Democrats, generally support this. So the only thing that I can come up with is the idea that the Republican Party is just lying to you. And they want to get credit for things that they didn't do because they think that you're stupid enough to fall for it. And there you go. Moving on. It appears that people are still trying to cash in on former President Donald Trump, even promising to get him back on Twitter if they get enough donations. Interesting. In fact, this is according to a recent report from Politico. Supporters of former President Donald Trump are being flooded with robocalls from at least one political action committee asking for donations to help fund Trump's political comeback. Oh, great. Now, if you're MAGA, you look at that and you're like, oh, great. Oh, well, give me that wallet. Here we go. Okay, well, now there's a problem with that. And it's none of the money in this case actually goes to Trump at all. Now, the report notes that one such PAC, Campaign to Support Republican Leaders, is actually promising that every $100 donation will help Trump get back on Twitter. That's not actually true. I mean, what are they going to do? Bribe Jack Dorsey? I got news for you. Dorsey, I mean, Dorsey's pretty rich. Your $100 ain't going to do much. All right. But it will line someone's pocket. And that's kind of the point. So now, according to information on the PAC, they're not registered with the government, and not $1 will go to Donald Trump. So who is getting the money? Well, that's an interesting question. So before we get to that, there's more. A donation of $100, they said, would help Trump return to Twitter. For a similar amount, a potential donor can, quote, stop Kamala Harris and socialism. Only if we pool our money together can we hope to defeat socialism. Other calls ask for money to ensure that congressional Democrats don't dismantle the wall Trump started building along the U.S.-Mexico border. Ah, yes, that big, beautiful border wall. Oh, yes. Politico's Theodoric Meyer wrote this. One of the telemarketers behind the call, who spoke to Politico reporter on Wednesday, promised that 100% of the contributions go directly to President Trump. Do they, though? Do you think a telemarketer is going to tell you the truth? Honestly? We've got, the only people that we have to believe or listen to, actually, and decide who we believe is the telemarketers, the rando telemarketers. I don't necessarily believe that. I don't necessarily believe them. Let's just say that. I don't know. I got a bad feeling about this. Now, these scammers, interestingly enough, are actually hurting donations that would actually go to Donald Trump. Weirdly enough. Now, according to an official named Kelly Sadler, spokesperson for the Trump-endorsed America First Super PAC, this is not the first time they've had problems with scammers. Sadler explained, there's nothing we can do to stop them. This is a problem for the campaign, as well as us, as well as for the RNC. So now I mentioned who's running the scam. Well, in this one telemarketer, according to Meyer, said he was calling from the 33rd floor of the Dallas office building, a building which is home to a WeWork office that's been linked to a man named Matthew Tunstall. Adding Tunstall is the treasurer of the Support American Leaders PAC, which lists its address as the same Dallas WeWork office on Federal Election Commission forms. Another telemarketer in the recent robocalls identified the group behind it as the Campaign to Support the President. That group, too, lists Tunstall as its treasurer on FEC forms. The report goes on to note that the Support American Leaders PAC successfully pulled in about $2.5 million in the 2020 cycle. Less than $375,000 was spent on ads and voter contact supporting Trump, adding none of it went to Trump's campaign. So, now wait. Okay. 375,000 out of $2.5 million. Okay. Now, where'd the rest of it go? Where'd the rest of it go? Well, it's into somebody's pockets. Of course. So now, here's something I've noticed. There's a lot of scamming in the right wing. Okay, so much. And I mean, look, don't let me get into the business of televangelists. All right? Seriously. But it is rampant. Okay? Again, it's all basically a scam to build less, let's just say, savvy people out of their money to give to people with already massive fortunes. They use religion, of course, social issues, anger, feelings, other shady ways to manipulate people into giving the scammer money. Okay, and that's what happens. It happens all the time on the right. And now it actually happens so much that, I mean, it's essentially a cottage industry. So now a big example, of course, is ironically Donald Trump. He's like the scammer in chief. All right. His election defense fund, it was supposed to go and fund his lawsuits, his efforts to overturn this election. Didn't actually go to that at all. It actually went to the RNC. But also, you had Steve Bannon and Brian Kolfage with his Build the Wall campaign. Remember that? We build the wall. Yeah. They didn't build the wall. They actually took hundreds of thousands of dollars and paid themselves. They gave themselves the money. They used the money to pay for personal expenses, despite it saying not a cent would go to them. But hey, again, a fool and his money. Easily parted. So, I mean, again, I don't feel bad for them because you give money to these people, you get what you pay for. That's why I don't feel sorry for them, especially when, of course, we told them, we gave them the warning. Hey, Donald Trump, he's a scammer, right? The guy takes your money. I mean, that's the whole presidency, the whole campaign. It was nothing more than a scam to get you money, and then he accidentally won. I mean, but here's the thing. You tell them about this, like, nope, fake news, wrong, Trump 2024. Okay, dude. All right, do you, man? I guess I shouldn't expect a lot of money from people who donated to a man who set up a fake college, set up a fake charity, and can no longer, by the way, illegally operate a charity in the state of New York. Or whose entire career, again, was a fake advertising marketing scheme. But, I try to have some expectations. Some. That maybe people, once they've been scammed enough times, they might get it and be like, oh, I guess it turns out I was kind of scammed. I was kind of screwed over. Who knew? But apparently, no. I must be way too much of an optimist because you still have so many people that are falling for these obvious political scams. All right. Maybe another 100,000 examples will convince the rubes. Maybe. Okay. Let's move on. There's more. I know I'm just kind of blowing through them today, but I'm late enough as it is. An investigation into former President Donald Trump and his attempts at overturning the election results has found new evidence in the form of another phone call where Trump similarly put pressure on an official into finding him some votes. Now, there's a 6-minute recording out there of a phone call between former president and an investigator, Francis Watson, that took place on the 23rd of December and was published by the Wall Street Journal. So now in the recording, Trump could be heard telling the investigator to find more proof of election fraud in Georgia before basically Biden's inauguration, January 20th. Okay. So now the new information to this, as this recording has been out for a while, is that, well, quoting an unnamed source, official in Georgia with knowledge of the matter says the recording of the audio was located in the trash folder of Ms. Watson's device. Weird. It's in the trash. How'd that get there? I mean, strange place for this recording of a call that is, again, weirdly been recorded. Why was it recorded in the first place? I have no idea. Nobody knows. And then that same recording is in the trash. Okay. Fascinating. Now, the CNN report also claims that officials in Georgia earlier told them the recording of the call didn't really exist. Oh, that's why it was in the trash. Oh, yeah, no, what, call? No, there's no call. There's no pressure. What are you talking about? Well, then what's that in the trash? Oh, crap. What was that doing in there? Weird. I love this whole idea of like, and maybe this is just me, like kind of imagining this happen. and this going down this way, this person finding out that they had lied, or that someone else had lied on their behalf and said, what do you mean? There's no recording. There's no phone call. Or they themselves had lied about there being a phone call, dragging it into the recycle bin, and then saying, job's done. All right, we're good. And not realizing that putting something in the recycle bin does not actually delete the thing. It still exists. Like, it's still there. Like, you have to go and delete and empty out the recycle bin if you want to delete something. And even then, forensic experts, computer forensic experts, can go and find something that has already been deleted. And so, look, there's no real way to completely delete something without physically destroying your hard drive. So if they think that something exists, I got news for you. They're going to find it unless you, again, physically destroy the hard drive. And there's certain ways that you have to do it to make sure that the data is 100% unrecoverable. And that is really interesting. But look, this is something that not a lot of people know. You got to be a little bit computer savvy. But okay. Anyway, we have this tape now because somebody was not savvy enough to realize that you can't really delete anything off your computer. And that's, of course, after the president had pressured them to essentially do fraud. And that was, of course, the reason that they wanted to get rid of it in the first place. So anyway, there's more. Now, Mr. Trump told Ms. Watson to, quote, find the right answer, just like he had told Raffensperger, and that she would be praised for overturning the results. Well, yes. Well, yes, of course. Encouraging her to look for discrepancies in the signature check for absentee ballots, Mr. Trump said, but if you go back 2 years and you can get to Fulton, you're going to find things that are going to be unbelievable in Fulton. The dishonesty that we've heard from, but Fulton is the mother lode. What's in Fulton? What? I mean, really? What's in? If there was evidence of something rotten in Fulton, well then, okay, you would think that the multiple investigations would find something, especially by the Trump administration or Republicans that are pro-Trump Republicans that were trying to find something to justify challenging the election results. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't present actual evidence because it didn't exist. Mr. Trump also told Watson that he hoped that we could win Georgia and that you have the most important job in the country. Well, that sounds, again, a lot like what he told Raffensperger. I played for that. I played that call. I remember playing that call. 11,785 or 780 votes to win the election, I think. Okay. So this really tells you, though, how incredibly important the Georgia call was. And on that, I don't think that is the only place Trump had ever called. I'm willing to bet that he maybe made some calls to people in Pennsylvania, maybe people in Michigan. I don't know. Trump, I think, was pretty desperate to win this election by hook or by crook. So he's going to try whatever he could to do this. And this seems to be more proof of that. Now, the fact that he tried to interfere and put pressure and why this ended up in a trash folder, I mean, it just makes the whole situation look really bad. Just really bad. And nobody really knows except for Watson why this ended up in the trash, and she ain't saying anything. Now, she did tell CNN affiliate WSTV's investigative reporter Mark Winnie that even though she was surprised Trump called her, she did not perceive any pressure. Oh, no pressure. No, totally fine. Also said, it is something that is not expected. As I mentioned in the call, I was shocked that he would take the time to do that. You're shocked that Donald Trump would try to call you to pressure you into stealing an election based on nonsense? Especially when, by the way, if you had been paying any attention to his rhetoric before the election taking place about how he was talking about if he loses the next election, it's not because he lost. It's actually because of massive voter fraud. The Democrats stole the election from Donald Trump, and that even if the results end up, being in favor of the Democrats, in favor of Joe Biden, that he wasn't going to give up that it wasn't going to give up, that it was going to continue to be in power. Now, thankfully, that turned out to not be the case, but still, he was telling everybody that. It's not like he was locked in a room, and they caught him on secret tapes going, "Oh man, I think the election is going to be stolen by the Democrats. We got to be careful." No, that he was out there telling everybody. So this is not a surprise. How do you not see that coming? How do you not get surprised at all? No, it just looks really, really bad. Somehow, I do not think that file, which again, for some reason had been recorded in the first place, and that's also curious, ended up in the trash by accident. Just saying. But, I can sit there and speculate as to the reasons why she did what she did. But it's probably best to wait for the investigation to happen. That is going on in Georgia. There's a probe going on into these calls. And so, to wait until we find the facts. Think you may need to talk to Sidney Powell or Mike Lindell. They'll show you loads of. Oh yes. Election experts Sidney Powell and the Pillow Guy. Yes. Yeah, somehow more trustworthy than the head of the Department of Justice. Sure. All right. I wonder if more calls will be leaked. Possibly. That is very, very possible. All right. Just power right through. As a result of the American Rescue Plan being passed through Congress and signed by the president, some Americans are actually seeing direct payments of $1,400 going into their bank accounts. Some. Others are seeing something else. Debt collectors coming in to swoop their survival checks. Fascinating. Now, this is unfortunately a result of how the bill was passed. So let me give you some details here. This comes from David Dan of the American Prospect. So he pointed out that unlike the last round of direct payments to Americans, the $1,400 under this plan are subject to debt collections for private debts. Or as Dan puts it, makes the American Rescue Plan look like a cash cow for debt collectors. Great. So now, wait a minute. So now I mentioned that the last round of stimulus checks, the $600 under the Trump administration, was protected from this. Well, what's the difference, right? Why were there no protections built into this one? Well, it's unfortunately because of the way that it was passed through Congress. Budget reconciliation. So now budget reconciliation, they had to use this because no Republicans voted for this. None. So in order to get it past a filibuster, they had to do the reconciliation, which only required a simple majority vote. Unfortunately, thanks to the arcane Senate rules, they weren't able to put this protection into the kind of bill. As a result, Dan notes, the Byrd rule in this case actively transfers emergency funds to financiers. So that's the result of this. Okay. Now, you would think that this might be a glaring oversight. No, it turns out that it's not. Lawmakers were actually well aware of the issue as the aid package made its way through Congress. Days after the Senate passed its version of the bill earlier this month, Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden of Oregon put out a statement vowing to introduce standalone legislation to protect payments from debt collectors. That, unfortunately, did not happen. But here's what Wyden said, quote, while Democrats intend to protect the third payment from private debt collectors, Senate rules did not allow us to include that protection in the American Rescue Plan. Wyden said, referring to the rules of the budget reconciliation process, which requires provisions to have a direct impact on federal spending or revenue. Last year, Democrats and Republicans joined together to shield relief payments, Wyden added, and I would hope that Senate Republicans, again, support ensuring families receive the $1,400 they need to pay rent and buy groceries. Well, that didn't happen. So again, here's the second stimulus bill, not the second one in the series of them, but just the second one that didn't have these protections. Remember, the $1,200 stimulus check under the CARES Act also didn't have these protections. And what we saw is what's inevitably going to happen now. Debt collectors coming in to basically swoop the payments out from under you and use it to pay off old debts, mainly medical debt, student loan debt, things like that. So now, unfortunately, a lot of people who needed the checks for food, or rent or medicine or whatever, they didn't get them. And they're not going to get them now. The only one that they would get, ironically, is the $600 one. Wow. Now, it sucks. It sucks. It does. Under Trump, the Republicans, of course, were the majority in the Senate. They needed the Democrats to vote with them. And so the Democrats, upon getting a lot of pushback for the first coronavirus stimulus bill that didn't have these protections, added them in. And since Republicans needed Democratic votes, they, were able to put this in there with the $600 payments and get this passed. This time, no Republicans vote for this. Okay. And because the reason is that they don't want to help Americans. And if the Democrats get the credit for helping Americans, well, that's something that Republicans don't want. So it just really comes down to pettiness. All right. Now, you might think that, hey, look, these are Senate rules. What can you do? There's really nothing we can do, right? It's kind of like the minimum wage. That they decided, to take that out of the bill so it could go through reconciliation, because the parliamentarian said that, well, under the rules, we don't think that it really has an impact on the budget or anything like that. And so what could you do? Well, Dan said that they could have passed a standalone patch in order to address this. This is what Wyden was talking about. Unfortunately, now it's too late. Now the checks are already moving through direct deposit. A patch at this point would have limited effect. Needed to have been passed the same day, a real failure of Congress and the president. Dan did add that, yes, the patch, even if it were passed, would have a little bit of an effect, not too much, but it would stop a flood of new judgments from debt collectors to siphon stimulus funds out. For those with debts who don't have a judgment yet, he adds, get your money out of your bank immediately. 1 in 3 U.S. adults had debt in collections as of 2014. This is not theoretical. So basically, if you did get your money and you still have debts out there, they're like, get it out of your account, get it before they garnish it. It's like you're trying to hide from mobsters. Jeez. Now, all right. And as Yahoo Money explained on Saturday, and this is how they can do this, any private debt collector that has a judgment against you can garnish the latest round of payments. Credit card and medical debt are the two most likely to be collected by debtors. Stimulus checks may also be garnished by debt collectors for unpaid private student loans in some circumstances. So now, if they knew for all this time, and they, and they thought that this was a problem, and actually got pushback for this problem, why didn't they do this patch? Well, because it would have required Democrats to flout Senate rules. Okay. Now, a standalone legislative fix would require the support of 10 Republicans in order to defeat the filibuster. So we still have this thing where it requires 60 votes to get anything passed Democrats have, I mean, people that generally caucus with the Democrats in total, along with Kamala Harris, vice president, you would have 51, just a simple majority. All right. Now, as I keep mentioning, no Republicans voted for this bill. None. And so now the thing is that why I point to the Democrats, because you might be thinking, wait, why are you going after the Democrats when it's the Republicans that are blocking everything? Well, because there is a way around it. And the Democrats refuse to do anything to get around the Republicans. And that would be, of course, eliminating the filibuster. There's two principal people that are against it. Actually, generally three that I can name off the top of my head. Kirsten Sinema, Democrat from Arizona, Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, and Senator Dick Durbin. And so those Democrats are against getting rid of the filibuster. Now, of course, Manchin comes out later and says, "Oh, well, I'm against eliminating the filibuster, but I would be in favor of reforming it. Maybe making it the talking filibuster, so they can't just table it and leave." Okay. Look, is it what we need? No, we need to get rid of the filibuster. Is it something that maybe might help? I guess, possibly. But right now, nobody's going to do anything. And so what this is going to be is that Democrats will continue to propose things and then bash their head against the wall, because the Republicans and the Republicans of the wall. And that's basically what they exist to be. They are the wall that will prevent us from basically doing anything that we can't do outside of reconciliation, dealing with the budget. And so that's unfortunate. Unless some Democrats, eliminate the filibuster, we're pretty much stuck. And unfortunately, so many Americans, as a result, who are relying on this check to make ends meet, well, they're going to end up losing all, or at least a part of it, to debt collectors. It's a missed opportunity and a massive failure for the people who need this the most. All right. Moving on. Last story for y'all. I'm blowing right through it. Is there a way to find out if somebody's going to steal your stimulus check? Generally, if you know that you owe debts, and you tend to know if you're in collections. So if you've had a bill collector that calls you, or has been trying to get a hold of you, generally, and has been successful in getting a judgment against you, odds are they're going to steal your stimmy. All right. Last story. School officials in North Carolina are apologizing after fourth graders at Waxhaw Elementary School were given an assignment where they were asked to imagine what people would post on Twitter if the platform existed during the Civil War. Now, the results of this were not at all surprising, although people are surprised. Now, whoever came up with this idea, it's a bad idea generally, because it's going to lead to bad takes. Because here's the thing, not only is Twitter a dumpster fire today, imagine back then it would be an absolute worst dumpster fire. Again, you don't even have to imagine how bad it would be, because we have an example of how bad it could get. Now, speaking to the Charlotte Observer, Union County NAACP member Kimberly Morrison Hansley said the results should be disturbing to anyone. The tweets that were displayed in the school's hallway ended up being all pro-slavery. Again, maybe it's because the students imagined that everybody was going to be pro-slavery back then, which says something. And what it says is generally not good. Now, these tweets were also displayed publicly on the school's Facebook page. So they took these tweets and they plastered them all over the hallway. That's problematic. And also on Facebook, also problematic. Now, I don't know, maybe it was a whole thing of like, hey, look, this is what it would be like back then. Okay, but you're again showing like this is sort of the equivalent today of saying, okay, well, what's Parler like? Let's just post posts from Parler as a study. Not a good idea, because you're going to end up with Nazis. Because that's essentially a lot of people on Parler, white nationalists. What age group? Fourth graders. It's fairly young. Now, as you can see from this, I don't even want to say the tweet, but there it is. It's pretty bad. It's just pretty bad. All right. Ironically, though, it does kind of prove a couple of different points. For one, Twitter is as awful as we imagine it would be, no matter what. No matter what era something like social media would be, the loudest, worst voices tend to get amplified the most. And it also demonstrates how racism is pretty inherent in American culture, and has been for the beginning of America. And so that's something that, of course, makes conservatives' heads explode when you say something like that. Like, hey, I guess it turns out this country is built on the backs of enslaved African Americans. There's no bones about it. It's absolutely true. And the only thing that we can do now is recognize that this is the case, move on from it by making sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And that's the thing. We have to make sure not to repeat the mistakes of the past. But again, the fact that kids immediately posted this complete and utter horrible racistness, that's not a word, racist horribleness is a great example of the racism endemic in our society. I mean, look, I would expect if you're going to do something like this, which I strongly advise that you don't, maybe use this as an example. It's like, hey, this is like the worst part. But then, of course, you have abolitionists and you have civil rights leaders and things like that that are pushing. No, they don't push any of those. They didn't think of any of those people. And that's really bad, because it really shows a failure of education on the subject. Now, as a result, the outrage is absolutely real. Outraged parents sent letters to school officials about this, understandably so. Parent Brittany Buford told WCNC Charlotte that it wasn't surprising that racism and institutional racism continues to rear its ugly head in that community. Quote, "There's nothing else to call it. There's no second side to this coin. Racism is racism." True. Superintendent Andrew Holohan agreed, calling the assignment, quote, "racially insensitive and not appropriate." Quote, "I want to be clear. Any type of assignment such as this is unacceptable. We are taking this matter very seriously and will ensure this doesn't happen again." Union County Schools has also since apologized and said in a statement that the assignment was unacceptable. "We apologize for offending parents, staff, students, and members of our community," the statement said, adding that district administrators are taking this matter very seriously and met with the entire Waxhaw elementary staff. So now maybe you're going to disagree with my take on this. Of going forward. But I think that this might be able to use as a learning experience. Now, hear me out. And maybe I'm wrong. You can cancel me if you want. But I think people should use this as an illustration of why this is racism and why that tweets like this or statements like this are wrong. And slavery, wrong. Because here's the thing, right? I've seen stories of, places that have revised their, quote unquote, revised their history books, right? To make to make slavery sound not so bad, right? Oh no, they were helpers, but they were unpaid helpers. And, they were getting taken care of by the benevolent white man, even though they wouldn't actually literally say that. But it would imply, right, that the slaves were better off. And you see this in conservative, rhetoric, about this. Oh, well, I know it was a bad institution, but they were better off in America than they were in Africa, weren't they? No, they weren't. You literally stole them from their homes and put them in chains. That is not better. That is actually worse. And so this should be used as an example, a teaching example, perhaps, of why this was wrong, and pointing out that a lot of the education around this, it has not been thorough enough, right? Slave owners and Confederates should not be glorified, and maybe put that in help them connect this into the modern day context of why people are outraged at, some of the old school names and, Confederate statues and things like that. So people would actually understand. Okay. I think it would be, if you do it right, a good learning experience, a teaching experience, because obviously these kids apparently need to understand why this was wrong. Okay. And I hope they do try to focus on the why. My concern is that they're going to maybe do a cursory punishment for the teacher and then bury the whole thing. And these kids might never really learn why what they did was controversial or wrong. And so that's what I'm concerned about. I want people to know. I want the younger generations to know the horribleness of slavery, and why people get so offended, why people are so up in arms about this, and why they're wanting to take down, mentions of the Confederacy, so that people have a proper context growing up, and so that no one will both forget it or make any sort of light of it, because this is a stain on our history, and it's one that shouldn't be forgotten. And it shouldn't be forgotten so that we can make sure not to do it again and to go forward, and be better for the country and be better for everybody. All right. PragerU. True. Oh, yes. It was a PragerU thing. I do remember talking about that. PragerU being used in the classroom. Jesus. Disastrous. But all right. Anyway, sorry for the late show again. Thank you for joining me. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very, very, important that you do that. Help us out. Watch our videos if you were here late or all, things like that. So thank you all again. Let me see if there's anything to read here. I do want to thank Good for Gabby for the tier 1 subscription. Do really appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right. And we'll see you all later. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great day. Stay safe. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Not everybody.
I will eat your ass. Every goddamn thing out of you people's mouths doesn't come true.
Dumps. Big, massive dumps. Please clap.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.